Good morning, Dan Proft, Amy Jacobson. Lest you think the Trump comments about Megyn Kelly were an isolated incident, more are coming to the fore. Maureen Dowd talks about some of her experiences with Donald Trump, who she kind of likes, she thinks serves a bit of a useful purpose. Now, of course, Dowd is a liberal, so she probably likes Trump creating havoc within the Republican primary. But 1990 piece in Vanity Fair by a reporter named Marie Brenner. This was at the time that Trump was getting divorced from Ivana.
His first wife or second or third or... No, Ivana was the second. Okay.
Trump explaining what was happening, why the tabloids had such a fascination with Ivana during this divorce proceeding. Trump said, when a man leaves a woman, especially when it was perceived that he left for a piece of ass, a good one, there are 50% of the population who will love the woman who is left. So that's Trump talking about his wife, apparently maybe leaving his wife for, as he described it. I just described it. I don't need to say it again.
Repeat the word, Dan.
And Marie Brenner, that reporter, subsequently in her next encounter with Trump, got a glass of wine poured down her back because Trump didn't like the story for all kinds of obvious reasons. But the question
She should have filed a police report against him. But go on.
Well, that is technically a battery. But the question is, does any of it matter? The more boorish and crude Trump behaves, the more lowbrow rhetoric he uses, it seems to be the more support he gets. NBC Wall Street Journal poll over the weekend finds that his position as the front runner, at least according to national polls, has not moved despite his debate performance, despite his comments about Megyn Kelly. To answer that question and many more, we're now joined by our friend Fred Barnes from the Weekly Standard. Fred, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here, but don't ask me to explain the impossible to explain.
well, isn't it just? I mean, basically, my sense of this is Trump is running around telling all these people at all of the institutions of power, pretending he's not one of them, all of the institutions of power, look, you guys have no clothes. And there's a lot of people that feel they've been slighted by those institutions of power, and he's their vehicle.
I think that's absolutely right. There's a huge chunk in the Republican Party, particularly, and those who feel that Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and others in Washington and the Republican National Committee and the party's elite have, even after these tremendous Republican victories in 2010 and 2014, taking the House and the Senate and state houses all over the country, every place, even in Illinois, the Republicans are getting nowhere. They have no achievements. They haven't impeded Obama. Obamacare still lives. And now Republicans in the Senate are not going to even have an up or down vote on defunding Planned Parenthood and on and on. And that's why they're mad. And Trump has become their champion. He said, I can do things. These people don't.
But Trump's attitude toward women, his stance on immigration, John McCain comments, don't you think that's hurting the Republican Party?
Well, not yet. I don't think that's the problem. What I think a bigger problem is that he is really deepening a split in the Republican Party. I mean, there is a group. I mean, at least a poll show it's about a quarter of Republicans around the country. There's 25, 26% that Trump gets in the polls who have been furious for a long time. They want Boehner to go. They want McConnell to go. And they're the ones who think, gee, why haven't we killed Obamacare? Why are we renewing the Export-Import Bank and on and on and on? And he's making this split between them. This is the rank and file. This is the grassroots, or at least a chunk of it, and Republicans in Washington. He's deepening that split. I mean, it was already getting a lot worse. I'm sure you all have heard about it many, many times.
Yes.
And I think we'll hear more about it. Now, whether Trump intended to do this, he'd figured out a strategy that says, boy, I can really attract all these people. Whether that's the case or not, he has done it.
Well, there's no question. And here at home in Illinois, we've got somebody that spends a lot of time consorting with the other side and Senator Mark Kirk. So that just feeds the disaffection that Trump is capitalizing upon.
Indeed.
So let's go back to the debate on Thursday night. One of the big winners, Carly Fiorina, a poll over the weekend shows her spiking a little bit. Is Carly Fiorina a real contender? Can she get beyond good debate performances to building the kind of infrastructure to compete in the early states?
Well, my suspicion is she can't. There are candidates, whether it's Jeb Bush or Scott Walker. Well, Jeb Bush started with a network all around the country, so he had a built-in campaign. There are Bush people everywhere after 2 Bush presidencies. Scott Walker seems to be building one. He has gotten one of the most prominent Republicans in Virginia, Senator Mark Obenshain, a state senator, to be his leader here in Virginia. And others have, even Ted Cruz has raised an enormous amount of money for his PAC, and he has people around the country. An infrastructure is something that I don't think Carly Fiorina has. Hard to build at this point. And what happens is, we've seen it before, a newcomer can do well, and heaven knows Carly Fiorina has been impressive for sure. And then maybe you do okay in Iowa, and you're still around after New Hampshire. And then you get to these days like next March 1, with all these southern primaries and so on, and they're all on the same day. And you don't have the ability to have a credible campaign and advertising and everything in all these states, and you fade.
But Carly Fiorina, during the debate seemed very strong on foreign policy. She talked about her personal relationships with Benjamin Netanyahu and King Abdullah from Jordan, and seemed to have a plan on how to, get rid of the Iranian arms deal, but also how to fight ISIS. Wasn't that impressive?
She was very impressive. I spent a couple of days with her in 2010 when she was running for the Senate in California, which was an impossible dream, of course, winning that in California. And she was impressive then. She's gotten much, much better. I mean, she is a very, she speaks in this really serious and authoritative tone, which I think people like in a presidential candidate. There's no doubt how good she is. And I think she's got a future somewhere, but it's just hard to win a presidential nomination without a built-in infrastructure. The one I remember the most is Gary Hart, going back to 1984. I'm old. So
sure.
No, I
covered that.
I know people who covered that too.
And Walter Mondale was an uninspiring candidate, but he had a campaign everywhere. He lost in a few states to Hart, and then Hart expired because he didn't have the infrastructure and the money and the support all around the country in every state.
Well, outside of Walker and Jeb, perhaps Rubio, who everybody seemed to have their moment or a couple of moments on the stage on Thursday night, in both debates, but particularly the main event.
Yep.
But who did you think presented themselves the best and also has that other piece of it, the capacity to build infrastructure that can really compete for the nomination that we're not otherwise talking about beyond Walker and Rubio and Bush?
Well, I wonder about Chris Christie. I thought he had a very good debate. I thought he won the arguments he had with Rand Paul and with Mike Huckabee over different subjects. But, he's late into the campaign. I think he's gotten over this thing about blocking the ramp to the George Washington Bridge, that scandal issue. But, he's late, and building a very strong campaign everywhere is going to be hard in his case, sort of a moderate conservative, because so many of the people he would want to draw money from and to run his campaign in various states, they've already been gobbled up by the people you named, Jeb Bush, Rubio, Scott Walker. So there may not be much left for him, but I thought he had a very good debate, and we'll see in his case.
All right, Fred Barnes, Weekly Standard, weeklystandard.com. You can check out his writings, and Stephen Hayes and Bill Kristol. A lot of good stuff there. Fred, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good. I enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
And he joins us on our turnkey.pro answer line.